this is a bit of a philosophical question, but I guess I've heard the left put this forward sort of. They'll say, we want to create a society where you don't really own anything, but you're happy having nothing. So let's say home prices keep going up, the interest rates keep going up, people can't buy homes. So they're just renters and they never really own anything, which isn't really
Yeah,
good long term if you're
yeah,
becoming an older person and so on.
yeah.
So do you think that's kind of the way society's moving, especially in leftist cities? And how do we prevent that from happening where families can still have American dream, a small house, a car, things like that?
So one of the things I talk about in my book, Why America Matters, which by the way, your audience can find at whyamericanmatters.com, I hit on this issue extensively. So you're talking about what was actually articulated by the World Economic Forum around this idea that you'll own nothing, you'll be happy, comes from this concept that, yeah, you don't need to own assets. You don't need a home. You don't need a car. You don't need this or that. Just rent it all. Just whenever you need it, and same with jobs, the gig economy. Just pick up this job here, this job there. One of the things I talk about in my book is the middle class, the importance of the middle class to America. We were the first country to really develop a serious middle class. Europe's middle class didn't really emerge for almost 100, 150 years later, close to the end of the 19th century. And that middle class, something that was common to it was this belief in the value of home ownership. And it has been that way for as long as Americans have been Americans, this desire to own property, to own land, to own their own homes. Why? Well, what made the middle class was the ability to take some of their earnings, because they were mostly wage earners, and put it into a store of value. Okay, so they weren't playing the markets, they weren't investing in all the things we were just talking about, stocks and bonds and commodities. They were investing in homes and they were investing in their lands. And that allowed them to transfer value to the next generation, to their children, to their grandchildren, afford to send them to better schools, afford to help them get a home. All of these things enabled the middle class to be capitalists in a sense, to have enough wealth stored up that they could transfer it to their children, to their grandchildren. And that is what is being robbed right now. When I talked earlier about how for the first time, institutional investors are really getting into the single family residential market. It's exactly that. These people that they're squeezing out, the middle class, the first time home buyer, the couple trying to get a better house, to have room for their kids, all this sort of thing. And that same force, this sort of attack on home ownership is an attack on suburbia, which in itself is an attack on the middle class, because this is what defines it in America. And I don't believe that we can have a strong America without a strong middle class. So I do think it's an issue. I think we have to think about policies that really ensure home ownership. Obviously, we went through a housing bubble where a lot of mistakes were made, some innocently, some fraudulently, in the global financial crisis, the mortgage markets before that. It doesn't mean that the idea of housing as a store of value isn't still very important. I think it is.
Yeah,